Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Jerry Jaffe, the world's most highly educated stand-up comedian, and welcome to today's live stream for the Comical Heathen podcast. I, of course, am your host. I'm the head heathen. I welcome heathens of all stripes, colors, and personalities. We are just here to hang out on a Sunday and have fun. Maybe you went to church, maybe you didn't go to church, but this is what I'm doing on my Sunday. So thanks for joining us. You'll see I have some guests coming in. In a moment, I'll bring the hilarious comedian from Cleveland, Steve Mers, up on the podcast. And then we have a caller who's going to call in a few minutes. And then we have another guest who's going to log in and join us in about half an hour. So we got a lot going on, a lot of guests, a lot of topics. I went with the topic for this live stream, Religion in the News, because I don't know what happened in the past week or so, but it seems like every day there is another headline that would make a moderate and right-thinking heathen's head go like that. You know, I could pull the ripcord on my own engine and spend an hour ranting about this, but I'd much rather have fun hearing what other people have to say and hanging out with some fun and intelligent comedians. Here's a couple of announcements I want to get out up at the beginning before I bring on any guests. This podcast originally started a few years ago as a side project meant to support the research for a book I'm writing on satire, and probably the first 25 episodes were me interviewing comedians about satire, and I interviewed all kinds of comedians. It would be boorish of me to list them all, though I certainly was excited to interview Lewis Black. So if you haven't heard that episode, go back and look up my interview with Lewis Black. But I've interviewed many other interesting people, and you can go through the archives and see who they are. But I will mention that the book itself is coming out. This is Religious Satire in the Era of New Atheism by Jerry C. Jaffe. That's me. It is about satire after September 11th, particularly religious satire, which there was clearly a heightened interest and increase in religious satire after September 11th. And I link it to that exact same era, like the aughts, was the rise of what some people call New Atheism. So I sort of connect all of those dots. It's from Routledge, and you can see it says hardcover, $66.99. No one's going to pay $66.99. Or should I say, please, if you want the hardcover, you can get it for $66.99. But I will say there is a Kindle version available. You can see it here on the share screen for $26, and that's a more reasonable price for a book. So please consider looking into that. That comes out in July with pre-orders in June. I'm going to say one more topic I particularly wanted to mention, and then I'll bring on our first guest. Steve is patiently waiting in the green room. Thank you, Steve, for your patience. Somewhat ironically, yet seriously, I recently became an ordained minister through what's called the Universal Life Church. That is a real ministry, by the way. Anyone can access their website and pay a fee and become an ordained minister. And you might think, well, why would you do that, Jerry? You're a very talkative atheist and secularist. Why are you now a minister? Well, Universal Life Church, one of its functions is to provide marriage officiating services for people who are outside of sort of conservative religious boxes. If you're a Catholic or a Jewish person, you'll go to your church or synagogue and get married. But whether you're other people, it could be atheists, it could be other people who just want to do things their own way, don't want to have a religious officiant. However, in the state of Ohio, and I believe all 50 of the U.S. states, an officiant of a wedding has to be ordained. You cannot just be like a dude. Now, there are some exceptions because, of course, you could go to the courthouse and have a judge do it. I guess if you're on a ship at sea, the captain could do it. But if you're just, Kelly and John, and you want to get married, and then you say to your friend Jerry, hey, we're all atheists. How'd you like to be our officiant? You go to a place like the Universal Life Church to get ordained. So I did just officiate John and Kelly's wedding ceremony. I was honored to be a part of it. You'll be glad to know that the part I participated in, which was the actual ceremony, I had my sports watch running during the ceremony, 22 minutes. They asked me to speak on the topic of love. I won't repeat the whole thing, but I'm proud of the fact that it was under 5 minutes. I've been to weddings where the minister speaks for 30 or 40 minutes, and you're like, dude, this is not about you. So you should not be center stage right now. Calm down. So I kept it short and sweet. A couple things from the wedding. First of all, John and Kelly are both comedians in the Cleveland area, and other comedians were part of the event. Our friend John Armstrong was one of the groomsmen, and Steve Mers was the videographer, and a couple other comedians were involved too. I apologize if there's anyone I didn't name. We all were put at one table, maybe to keep us from causing trouble with other people. So I was hanging out with John and Steve and some other people all night. It was a great time. We talked about whatever, X, Y, and Z. And I looked at John and I looked at Steve and I said, you should come on my podcast and we can talk about this stuff together. So I put together this live stream. That's part of the motivation. That's why I'm boring you with me being a minister. I am available to officiate your offbeat wedding, though. So hit me up at comicalheathen.com and I will officiate your wedding. I put a post up about becoming an ordained minister and officiating a wedding. And a lot of people put nice things. Some people, most of my Facebook friends know I'm not religious. So they just said, oh, that's cool, or that's funny, or they made a little joke, or they probably got like 100 likes, which I guess is not bad for an old guy. One person did jump in, a particularly religious-minded friend of mine, but who schooled me for mocking religion. And since that person's not here to defend themselves, I'm not going to throw any hardballs their way. But, other people chimed in too, or like, what the hell are you talking about? It was, a beautiful wedding among friends. Nobody at the wedding was mocking religion. In fact, it's the state's fault for requiring religious people to do this service. So whose fault is it really? So at any rate, that's what it's all about, people. So I'm going to bring in our first guest. He's patiently waiting. I've known him for many years. I wouldn't be exaggerating to say he's one of my favorite comedians in Cleveland. He may not remember this, but once at an open mic, he had his notebook out. And it was just a rowdy bar and people were just screwing around anyway. And Steve threw his notebook at the audience. And I just thought that was such an apt metaphor for Steve, throwing his jokes at the audience. Wonder if he remembers that. Anyway, let me bring him into the studio, make him part of the live stream. My good friend, Steve Mers. Steve, how are you?
Good. I mean, that's my superficial answer, but my real answer is just, I have been worried about, politics lately. It's not good. I think, do I watch too much news? I'm gaslighting myself where I'm like, am I just crazy? Am I losing my mind?
Going into the Hillary Trump election, I was going to the Nate Silver website every day because it was predicting Hillary would win. And it was making me calm down.
We did survive the first, but it's all just everything's just being torn away slowly. Yeah. And I just what do you think? It's not quick. I don't know. It's just
it's a slow but steady. I mean, Newt Gingrich made local issues national. That was his contract on America. So my saying is that Newt Gingrich killed the Congress, and Mitch McConnell's been fucking its corpse ever since.
Yeah.
And then Trump is on a whole nother level of, disturbing. Is there anything in particular in the news, one thing standing out of the past couple of days that just scares you or bugs you?
Project 2025 in general. Yeah, I like having rights and freedoms and things like that. I'm becoming more of a patriot, constitutionalist in a lot of ways.
Isn't it weird? I know, right?
It's so ironic. I'm way more of a patriot than any of these assholes are. It's pathetic. Sure. What's sad is I don't believe in free will either. So it's whose fault is it? No one's. Yeah. We're all just being thrown through this meat grinder, and I don't like it.
Well, that's it. It's what they call free will's a useful illusion.
Right.
You have to at least pretend to participate.
Do you ever wonder how the fact that you learned that there's no free will has affected your trajectory, so to speak? It's it's so ironic and very confusing to think about. It's like a Back to the Future sequel, You're like,
Yeah, so I was in college and I was explaining to a friend of mine why I didn't believe in free will. And I said, imagine that little, explosion, a little bomb, just a little bomb that throws dirt. And 2 specks of dirt have now been thrown by this little explosion. And the one speck of dirt says to the other one, I believe in free will. We're just specks of dirt that have been flown through the universe by a big explosion.
Yeah. Yep.
But for me, and this might be either the artist or the weirdo or the nihilist in me, I found it empowering. It's almost like a superpower. The lack of free will means you can do whatever you want.
It's freeing. I still have a set of principles I'd like to think I have control over. I think, but at the end of the day, you just conclude that you're lucky that you know these things and that's your trajectory. Because it is all cause and effect.
And that's why in my daily life, even though I'm happy to make fun of religion and politics and hypocrites, I'm not too concerned about the people around me. They're just their own specks of dirt, which I am too. So I'm just saying they're on the same level as me. I'm on the same level as them. And if they have different trajectories. Now, when we have, a Trump or a mega asshole, I'm going to call them out.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not being mean-spirited to my neighbor.
Yeah.
I did have one of our 12 regular listeners texted me with a topic that he wanted us to discuss.
Sure.
And so I posted about it yesterday, the 7 Mountain Mandate.
7 Mountain Mandate. Although I did briefly, I remember when you mentioned that, I did look over it for a second. So I feel like, go ahead and give me a brief rundown.
Yeah, I'll just say, here's what the introduction to Wikipedia says. The 7 Mountain Mandate is a dominionist conservative Christian movement of Pentecostals and evangelicals, Christians. It holds that there are 7 aspects of society that believers seek to influence: family, religion, education, media, arts, entertainment, business, and government. And it is like considered, I've looked up a couple of different quick theology websites. It is considered like Christian theocracy.
Yeah.
And its position is the irony of like the American Christians who feel like they're losing their rights. If the Supreme Court says, the Constitution says there shouldn't be religion in school, no praying in school, so to speak. I'm just being casual right now. They take that's like the group that takes that as an affront. Like, you're taking away our power. So we got to get our power back.
Yeah, they like power. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's very theocratic. There are some members of Congress right now who subscribe to this. I mean, explicitly 7 Mountain Mandate. And during his presidential reign, Trump's leading spiritual advisor was a 7 Mountain Mandate-er. So it's definitely like a power grab, and political and theocratic. And 2 of the news stories I saw one of which I posted online, were not about 7 Mountain Mandate, but were about like American Christian theocracy.
Yeah.
So if you want to dive into a couple of these stories, again, a friend of mine who I was talking to earlier today, I was saying, hey, you want to call in and ask us a question? And he's like, well, I read all the articles you posted. What am I supposed to ask you? And I said, me and Steve and John are not journalists or, theologians. We're here to just riff and screw around. So that's our goal here. Steve, John, anyone else, the 12 people listening at home, my 12 regular, we're just here. Like, imagine that you're in a green room before a show at a comedy club. This is what we might be talking about.
All right. Yeah.
So one of the articles was that in Louisiana, they've just made it legal to put the 10 Commandments in public school classrooms.
Yeah.
That's total Christian theocracy, in my opinion. What do you think, Steve? This was just June 19th, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, talk about, frankly, fucking going backwards. Do you have kids?
No. Why would I want to hurl an innocent soul into this barren hellscape?
Yeah, project another speck of dirt across the universe.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Go ahead.
Just like anything else, I just despise it. It's ironic that Donald Trump embodies basically all of them.
He's broken every single one of them throughout his life.
I mean, I find that ironic or whatever. I never know what ironic means anymore.
Correct. The word irony has been so deconstructed.
I'm like, what is it? Socratic irony? Like, I'm like, I don't remember what
Shakespearean irony, dramatic irony.
Yeah, I understand relativity better than I understand irony, which is so weird. Maybe that's ironic. I don't know. Well, I'll figure it out.
Well, one of our great philosophers of the modern age is Bender on Futurama. And on an episode of Futurama, while he's singing, he defines irony as the use of words in other than their intended meaning.
Yeah.
And so when the 7 Mountain Mandate or other Christian theocrats say they're worried about freedom because their freedom is being impinged upon, that's ironic because they don't give a fuck about our freedom.
No, yeah. I just, I have violent thoughts when I think about how my rights being taken away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I say violent, I mean like defending my life, like that kind of stuff. But this is me catastrophizing to the worst case scenario down the line to its bitter end.
Mm-hmm.
But sadly, that's what fascism does to the mind.
Yeah.
It's terrorism. That's what I feel like. We're being terrorized.
Yes.
I want people to be able to exercise their religion freely as long as it doesn't interfere with anyone else. So I'm not in that boat, despite my atheism. Because that would be,
I compare it to smoking. I don't give a fuck if people smoke at home.
Right.
But I don't need their secondhand smoke blown in my face.
Yeah.
And I don't, same thing. People's personal religion, I don't care until they blow it in my face.
Right. There's a lot of this is what we're doing without a lot of, we're sure that this is true.
Right.
That's the pinnacle of the silliness of it to me, is just, they're not going to worry about if they're right. Well, you get it. I'm not going to get into all this, but
I have another irony for you about the Seven Mountain Mandate. So I got a message from one of our 12 regular listeners, Corey, out in California, asking if we would discuss this topic. And so I found a theology website. It's like a blog, and a actual pastor from Idaho wrote a critique of the Seven Mountain Mandate. I can put a link to it in the podcast version of this episode, but the gist of it is, he just went through and destroyed all of their biblical notions. Like, he's saying, this is not what the Bible says. You misunderstand this part of the Bible. What I think is ironic about that is, the Bible means what you think it means. Like, he's not any more right than the Seven Mountain Mandators are.
You mean like fundamentalism? Like,
yeah,
kind of level? Yeah.
You know, this gentleman, I just know his bio from this blog. I don't know him personally. I mean, he's a minister in a church in Idaho. So he's ostensibly religious, and he's writing a theology blog. But I like his interpretation of the Bible, which might be more, I don't know, correct in some historical sense or whatever. But the point is, I love it when two different religious people, like a Methodist and a Catholic, or a Jew or a Muslim, debate theology.
Yeah.
Because it's like arguing about what unicorns look like.
Right. Like, it's arguing a fan fiction universe.
Yes, it's fan fiction.
Like, no, the articles were not mandated until the sixth seal was broken in the era of Nymph. Sounds like an elven universe of fantasy, and it's so stupid.
Right?
Oh my God. All right.
Yeah, and yet that's where the theocracy comes. It's stupid until they blow it in our face.
Yeah. Yep. My thing is, like, don't force me to go to church. Don't force me to do anything.
Right.
I mean, beyond that, though, it's still scary. I mean, beyond the physical coercion.
You might know this already, but can I tell you some funny Ten Commandment history?
Sure.
During the 20th century, there has been a kind of consistent push to put, like, the Ten Commandments on display in courthouses.
Yeah.
But you know who is behind that? Film producer Cecil B. DeMille, when he made his Ten Commandments movie, started funding local groups to put the Ten Commandments up as a publicity stunt.
And then it spiraled into what it is now.
So now when I see this Louisiana ruling, like on Facebook, I enigmatically put Cecil B. DeMille wins again.
Yeah. Well, hey, but what is religion but a piece of fiction that gets spiraled into a false reality, right?
Yeah, PR.
So it's tracking very well with the religious in its nature. That is hilarious, though, by the way. I find that ironic. It's kind of like with the Pledge of Allegiance. That was only mandated, in the 50s or so? Somewhere around there?
Yes, they added under God.
Oh, right.
During the Cold War.
Yeah.
And also, none of our founding fathers did the Pledge of Allegiance, nor would have they.
No, it's very weird.
Here, I'll tell you another quick fun fact. This is me being a professor, so I apologize. And then I'm going to bring in our caller and see what his question is. Here's a bar bet that you can win. So a bar bet is like a bet that the other person can't win.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a good, like, a edition of the Bible, like a King James second edition. Like, it's got to be like a scholarly good. But if you have a good edition of the Bible, bet somebody that they cannot name the Ten Commandments. And no matter what they say, they'll be wrong, because there are no 10 Commandments in the Bible.
Mm.
Moses goes up the mountain, talks to the burning bush, talk about fan fiction and science fiction and whatever.
Yeah.
And then he comes back with the laws of God. They are not enumerated. Here's the first, here's the second, here's the third. It's just the laws of God.
Mm.
Sunday school teachers, a couple of 100 years ago, I don't have an exact date, just started calling them the 10 Commandments so children could memorize them. They're not actually the 10 Commandments in the Old Testament. That's a Sunday school thing.
Yeah.
So no matter what a person writes down for what they think the 10 Commandments are, they're going to be wrong.
Yeah, wow. That's revisionism for you, just constantly fitting an agenda retrospectively or whatever. Yeah. So
I was once teaching something about the Old Testament, and I had a student, they raised their hand, and so they get a gold star for participating, but they wanted to say that the Bible they used at home, like, said different shit in it. Like, it was like a different translation that was more Christian-y and more with what he was taught. So that's speaking of revisionism.
Yeah.
All right. I have a friend. He's based in Ohio. He's one of our 12 regular listeners. And when he saw we were going to be talking about religion in the news, he volunteered to call in with a comment and a question. So I'm going to bring my good friend David into the studio. He's on audio only because he's calling in. And we'll see what he wants to talk about. Okay, Steve, and our 12 listeners at home?
Sounds good.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey, Dave, welcome to the stream. How the hell are you?
I'm doing all right. I was thinking about the articles, and I can't help, like, halfway through because it's so common for them to do so, halfway through the children who leave class to go study the Bible, I just couldn't help but think, if you open the door for one, you got to open them for all. And they're not going to like that, and then here comes the Satanic Temple. Like right at the end of the article, they went ahead and mentioned it, and I was like, there they are. But it makes me wonder, with the 10 Commandments being posted, I wonder if the Satanic Temple will get on top of that. I mean, it's fairly recent, but
it's in their wheelhouse
everywhere.
Yeah, it's totally the kind of thing they would get involved in.
Yeah.
So here's hoping. I mean, it's hard to count religions because it depends what you count.
Absolutely.
Anthropologists estimate there's like between 3,000 and 10,000 religions on Earth right now.
That's crazy.
So what do they want? Every single religion should like storm the Louisiana State House and demand that their version of the 10 Commandments be put up. And like it'll be like wallpaper with hundreds of different religious, worldviews or laws printed.
I think honestly it's going to take, like, a lot of them are very like xenophobic and racist and such. It's going to take like one group that doesn't see things just like them, and they're going to be like, oh, that's not what we meant.
Well, the difference now is, and I think this is not an accident, like both of these stories being in the news, like as current events.
Yeah.
Is the current Supreme Court will affirm this shit.
Oh, probably, given their right-wing siding.
Yes. The right-wing siding, and several of them are, maybe not all the conservatives, but like Alito and others are in the theocratic camp.
Yeah.
So that's why on the state level, they're doing these things. They're like daring, secularists or the Satanists
to like countersue and everything.
Yeah, so that it goes through the court system, because the current Supreme Court will say, yeah, you can do that with some bullshit interpretation. It's funny that the conservative judges basically are literalists, just like the biblical literalists.
It is crazy.
Neither of them are actually literalists. Like, if you took the Bible literally, there are no dinosaurs in the Bible. Right. So why are the literalists obsessed with dinosaurs? And there's nothing in the Second Amendment about owning machine guns, if you took it literally. So, they're very bad literalists. They're very selective literalists.
Well, it's like you said, they want to take the Bible for whatever sides with what views they have. And just interpret it that way.
Yeah, the thing with these Satanists is it's funny how they don't understand the religious groups don't understand that Satanism is a purely trolling. And why if you don't believe in the supernatural, why do you believe in Satan? I don't know, because I have a middle school level understanding of satire and sarcasm. You can't even pick up on these little things, but you think you're some sort of book. You like to analyze the Bible. You certainly don't have. I can't read Shakespeare, but I can read the Bible, and I understand. The context of humor in all of this satanic panic stuff. Oh, it's so silly.
Yes, well, I mean, I want the alignment chart from Dungeons and Dragons to be put in every school.
Right? Yeah.
That Harry reminds Potter. Me.
Yes, Dave.
The one article said that they're getting credit for leaving classes to study the Bible. And near the end, somebody actually got quoted, like a parent saying that she just thinks it should be fair since comparable to some students that can do secular things after school, like Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Does that mean kids can be allowed to leave the classroom to do secular things as well as Dungeons and Dragons and get school credit for it? Because I think that should be the case.
Yeah.
Steve, do you play Dungeons and Dragons?
I have before. Oh no, I've sat in on Dungeon with Eric Cribley, Mandy Lee, and Dan Handelman, and a few other friends.
Sure. Some of my favorite people.
A lot of sorcery was happening. We were all, it was a seance. We summoned some demons. We're all possessed now, and we're out to get everyone.
Excellent.
So,
well, then, I mean, I got to get all of you on the Comical Heathen then. I need more demons.
It's just, I can't help but mock everything. It's just, that's what it is at this point.
Yes. Well, that's the person who commented the one sort of negative thread for my comment about joining the Universal Life Church as a minister. The person commenting is ostensibly a comedian. This is what confuses me the most. Even if they're a Christian, even if they're religious, even if they find what I do offensive, don't they know we're comedians? Like, they should at least know, oh, I dislike Jerry. I don't like all his mocking of religion. But it's comedy. Like, they should know at least that much if they call themselves a comedian.
Yeah. And Jerry, you're doing the Lord's work. You are mocking religion. You are literally doing good because we are familiar enough with the topic. I've been like this since I was 13. And I've tested this over and over. All it does is get strong. All it does is recede into the stronger region, it's like, that's telling,
Well, I won't say that I remember it or I've memorized it, but I will say I can say something that most of these theocratic people cannot say, which is I have read the Bible twice from end to end. Now it's pretty long and boring and most of it's bullshit. So I didn't memorize it or take it too seriously.
Right.
But you think that would be the first thing you would do if you're an adult calling yourself a Christian, like,
yeah,
at least if you're going to blow your religious smoke in people's face.
Right. I don't want to see your IKEA couch if you didn't read the instructions. So,
yeah. David, you want to make any more comments before we kick you out? Comments or questions?
No, I'm just enjoying listening to the show.
Well, thank you for being one of our 12
continue to do so.
Well, feel free to join the chat or something if you want to add any more comments. Otherwise, me and Steve will find other things to mock for the next few minutes.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, you see David. That's God seeking his wrath upon that whatever city that is. It's lightning. I just figured I'd be like, look at the artwork. Yes. It's Zeus, actually. I'm a Zeus advocate.
Absolutely. We got to get Zeus's laws into every classroom in Louisiana.
Right. If we're a democracy, we might as well see through all the Greek principles, right?
Yes. So. Yep. I mean, each Greek god had their own temple, so it's like 20 religions right there, minimum.
The Pantheon.
Pantheons are a lot more fun.
They are.
Well, as a theater kid, I love Dionysus. Nice. That god, he's the god of theater, of course, but he's also the god of wine and sexuality, which are two very important components in the world of theater.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's so funny.
Hey, the Greeks figured some shit out. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
I would just like kids to be able to leave their classrooms to go and study science. How about that? Can that be a thing?
That would be amazing.
Take an hour out of their day every day to leave school to go somewhere else where they actually learn about science.
Yeah. Jerry, I think the real crux of the problem here is, why don't we all just be nice to each other?
Right.
Like, is that so hard? Like,
Right.
Can we just get to the core of like what makes people feel good and have a good life? And that is keeping people happy and being good.
Right.
But none of that seems to align with this. It's so silly to me. It's all just doom and gloom and apocalyptic bullshit. It's just like,
it's June, so it's Pride Month, and I'm happy to officiate any pride weddings who need an officiant. But additionally, there's been a lot of like gay bashing, on Twitter and social media. It's exact example of what you're talking about. Why isn't their reaction to their gay family members or neighbors one of love or even kind indifference? Like, it's none of your business.
Right.
Why do you gotta get angry about it? And then, twist a couple of Bible verses that they think is about being anti-gay.
Yeah. What about personal liberty? Beyond the scientific validity of homosexuality, even if it was a choice, it comes down to personal liberty and leaving people the fuck alone. That's how I feel.
And leaving how they fuck alone as well.
Exactly. Why is it your business so vehemently? That's kind of ironic in itself.
Steve, in your comedy, do you have any bits on religion that you like to do currently? Anything? Yeah.
Let's see. I know I have, but it's in recent years I have been working on being more palatable to general audiences, because I am known to turn people off, but I'm also I really mean what I say, and I really do feel the way that I feel when I say things. So I mean that lends itself to the validity of it to me.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I can't think of any. Right. Oh, well, a lot of politics with religion.
Sure.
Like I talk about how I like to go up to the people picketing outside of Planned Parenthood and act like I think that they're just workers there protesting to unionize. And I'm like, yeah, you guys should get paid more, just to make them mad.
Yes.
And about how sperm banks are the opposite of Planned Parenthood. And I can keep going, but yeah, that's generally the gist of it.
Sure. That's excellent. Yeah. I mean, let's just say like Bill Maher or Lewis Black, they come with a built-in audience. 90% of the people in their audience are there to hear them rant about politics or religion or whatever's, on their mind that day. Whereas you and I, when we do a show, we're kind of taking a chance to get edgy or to do religion or politics.
Right.
Because we're also trying to get paid $50 to be a feature at a small comedy club or something. So actually, a person I interviewed out of LA is called Ian Harris, and he's got a special out that's worth watching called Critical and Thinking. But I talked to him about it, and he's a headliner, and he said like the first half of his set, he lets the audience get to know him.
Yeah.
So I do wife jokes and job jokes and my hobbies, and then I tiptoe into topics based on how much they like me.
Yeah.
Hey, our other guest has now joined us, so I'm going to bring him into the stream. He was a groomsman at the Kelly and John wedding, and also a local comedian that we all love. Welcome to the stream, John Armstrong.
What's up, gentlemen?
John, how the hell are you?
I'm well. How y'all doing?
Good.
We're okay. Do you have any religious jokes or religious satire you're doing on stage currently?
Ish. Yesterday I did this thing. I was alluding that I was going to talk about the Israel-Palestine conflict. And I just the lead up was, I want to say something really quick. I know people don't like talking about politics on stage. And it's been a lot of tension and going on right now. And people feel like if you speak out, you're being anti-Semitic. But I really feel like I have to say something about this. And then I just start talking about how Kendrick Lamar has been shitting on Drake for the past few months. So I lead it into a misdirect of that. But I did have a joke I was doing before about Israel-Palestine. Again, not about the religious aspect, but more the Zionist colonizing aspect of it.
Well, I had last fall a plan to do a monthly podcast for 4 months, and each episode was going to be about conspiracy theories. So the first one was just like introduction to what is a conspiracy theory, and the second one was conspiracy theories that are anti-science. The third one I had planned was anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And that is when the Hamas attack took place, was the same month I was going to do that episode. And I had guests lined up already. And we all got into a little chat and said, there's no way we're doing this podcast. Like we all agreed, that even though our sentiments would be largely like, kindness towards Jewish people, of which I am one. But the whole topic was so explosive that nobody wanted to.
Yeah,
no one thought it was appropriate to even get within a mile of it.
Right.
So I never did episodes 3 or 4 of my conspiracy theory series.
That's one of the things why I have been trying to push forward and talk about it here and there, because the closest thing I can relate to it, as far as trying to be critical of Zionism without being anti-Semitic, is kind of like when with Black people, how you get into respectability politics, and you can address things that are going on like in the Black community, as far as, you know, high crime rates and out of wedlock births and things like that. And that can be true, but you can also talk about it from a, you know, these Black people are degenerate standpoint. So a lot of Black people try to avoid those, and white people too, who would call themselves allies, try to avoid those conversations because you don't want to feed any fuel to these people.
Of course, I want to be as much an ally as I can without being an asshole. The topic of Christian values being imposed into public schools. I mean, what's your opinion? And is there a Black community opinion of this type of, religious topic?
Well, I speak for all Black people.
Of course, that's why I invited you on.
You know what? The thing,
of course, give us your perspective.
The thing in like Black American culture is the church has always kind of been our conduit to not only like come together in fellowship, but also to address politics. So that's again how like there is a separation of church and state, but for Black people, the church was the only place where we could kind of organize, which is why those lines did get like kind of blurred. You know what I mean? So you do have that. But as far as like this thing with the 10 Commandments and schools and stuff like that, you have this old school kind of tradition with Black people where it's like, yeah, you know, bringing spanking back in school, and I don't see what's wrong with that, and we do need God. There, you will have that, but overall, I think there's a pragmatism in Blackness to where even though we know the church has been kind of a backbone for us, we know that it was more so because it helped in our trying to achieve some type of freedoms and equal rights and things like that. And it's not as to the bone of the actual dogmaticness of the text, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like we get into religion, but it was kind of a means to an end for freedom. It's not like a word for word evangelical.
I know 2 or 3 people who went to like seminary schools and then dropped out because going to seminary made them atheists. Like kind of being forced to study the Bible seriously. Hey, let me ask you a question. I don't mean to change the subject, but one of our listeners is a friend of mine, Corey in Michigan. And I'm going to bring up Corey's comment. She just texted me a comment. And again, as everyone knows, we're 3 comedians. So please construe this as like green room goofing around. We're not Harvard trained historians, as far as I know.
Speak for yourselves.
Yeah, I apologize. But here, Corey's asking about, in relation to the 10 Commandments, I'm paraphrasing a little bit because it was kind of a long text, but the gist of it was about the founding fathers, and most of them were religious and Christians. And so to what degree were they founding a Christian nation? Now, this comes up in classes I teach at the college where I teach, but you don't want my professorial answer. I want your sarcastic answers. Really, what are your thoughts, Steve and John, about the idea that the founding fathers were Christians who were founding a Christian country?
I'll go first real quick. Well, apparently not. They didn't want us to be a theocracy because they could have easily just installed one. And I think a lot of, the Pilgrims came over, of a religious freedom or something.
Yeah.
And they wanted to, but they, I think, were crazier than the people. Weren't they like kind of like, well, I can't remember.
They were the religious nuts of England.
Right. Yeah.
They were so wacky. They kind of got more kicked out than came here.
I think a British comedian, if I think of his name, I'll give him credit in a second, but he had a great joke where he goes, "You Americans call it Thanksgiving. In England, we call it fuck off Pilgrim's Day."
Was that Eddie Izzard that did that?
No, but I love Eddie Izzard. She's one of my favorite comedians. But Anyway, I'll think of his name in a second.
But yeah, the Constitution clearly is an indicator of their secularism. I feel like. And
why do you say that?
It just. I mean, just look at our history. We're not. It's been pretty bad. I mean, it's been pretty Christian, but it's never been to the point of like a full-on authoritarian religious thing, and it's only receded since then. You could argue that it was at one point, like it's strong, but there was nothing in place to really enforce anything from a constitutional standpoint. So I feel like
if you want to say that the founding fathers were committed to the 10 Commandments, they could have written the 10 Commandments into the Constitution.
Right.
What do you think, John?
Well, I agree. And again, I think that Christianity for them was more of a cultural unifying thing for Europeans. You know what I mean? More than it was, and to have some type of morality. You know what I mean? But like you guys said, if they really wanted that, they could have codified it in the law, because God knows, the stuff that they wanted. Only white land-owning males could own property. So the things that they really cared about, right? The things that they really care about, they wrote it down. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think again, the religion was kind of used to have some type of morality around the shit that they, in the back of their mind, was messed up, that knew was messed up.
Earlier, before you got here, John, I gave Steve a good barroom bet if you're looking to make some money off your drunk friends. I got another good one for you that goes along with this topic. In the U.S. Constitution, including the Bill of Rights, that's the first 10 amendments, how many times is God mentioned by name? Like God, Jesus, Lord, anything that would be directly God by name. How many times?
I honestly can say I don't know, but I'm going to guess less than 3, if not 0.
What do you think, Steve?
I honestly don't know. You kind of caught me by surprise. I'm like, that's a thing? All right. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I would have to agree with John.
Christian nation, so you would think, just like the 10 Commandments comment, they could have wrote the word God or Lord, Jesus into the Constitution, but they didn't ever. But at the end of the Constitution, it was signed. And at the end of the signature, it says, "In the year of our Lord." That's the only time that God is mentioned by name, is in the signatures. Where
was that a normal thing to do back then, to say "in the year of our Lord"? Well, I guess you could say that would have been inevitable and not necessarily part of not part of the literature of the.
Yeah, it's not a theological statement.
Yeah. Right. Again, it's more of a cultural thing, because we count time as from when Jesus was born, but that don't mean everybody who says it's at the year 2024 is a Christian.
During the Cold War, the communists were known for being atheists. And so Cold War politicians, to distinguish America from the communist atheists, started leaning into making America the Christian nation that could defeat the atheist communists. Yeah. So all kinds of creep, like "under God" and "in God we trust," got seeped into our culture that was not like part of the founding fathers or the Constitution. I think religion is only mentioned twice in the Constitution. During one of the articles, which I don't have in front of me, it basically says that there's no religious test for running for office. So that is separating religion from running from office. And then in the Bill of Rights, is the separation clause, where it's, separating the government from religion. So the only 2 times religion is mentioned is to explicitly separate it from the government running the business of the government.
One of the other things too that was going on in the 1700s is, and this can tie into some conspiracy shit.
I know what's coming now.
But it's not. But the original Illuminati, it wasn't this shady cabal. It was the illuminated ones, and it was these people who Europeans had went through the Renaissance, and they were really leaning into science and trying to be more objective and fact-based with as far as going forward. So the founding fathers, a lot of them were really into that. You know what I mean? So I think
they call that deism. And deism is like Benjamin Franklin, Jefferson, I think Madison, but I'm not sure. But a whole group of the founding fathers were like scientifically minded. And they believed in God, so to speak, but it was like the creation of the universe God. Right. Not the old man with the beard. And, Thomas Jefferson wrote a biography of Jesus in which he removed all the miracles. So I have it on my bookshelf over here.
Oh. What was his point in doing that? Was he trying to make him more human, or?
Well, I think it was trying to make a more creation. What a deist, as you say in the 1700s. If you were to take the parts of Jesus's story, which is about, I don't know, his kindness, his preaching, his as you might have, it sort of just implied his humanity, but not the healing lepers, not the raising from the dead, nothing that would be scientifically unsound.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more so humanizing them. Yeah.
Well, Steve was saying earlier that his favorite god is Zeus, and if you think of thousands of years ago, people not knowing where lightning comes from, and go, well, God makes lightning. And so what has happened from then until now is not only do we know more about where lightning comes from, we know significantly more about the natural world. So less of it needs explaining by religion. However, science can't explain everything. So I'm now going to use the phrase religious nuts. So religious nuts cling to what science can't explain.
The God of the gaps.
The God of the gaps. Thank you, Steve. You get a gold star. You're a good student. It's all about
there's a lot of Dunning-Kruger theology
because science continues to grow what we know, so the gap gets smaller.
Yeah.
Listen, let me ask you guys. I'm going to change the subject while we have some time. We have mentioned a couple times because it's related to all the other topics, the Supreme Court. But another thing in the news in the past week that's religion in the news is Alito being caught on tape. He's one of the Supreme Court justices, if you don't know.
Yeah.
Saying that he thinks America needs to be a more godly country. And he has, alliances with ultra-conservative groups, but actually getting sort of caught on tape admitting it. It was just, as one friend of mine said, we already knew that. It just proves what we already knew. So any thoughts about Alito or the Supreme Court?
Sure, Catholics are fucking weirdos.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like them. I actively hate religious.
They're fucking weirdos and they're fucking weirdos.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just absurd. I don't know where to go with that. It's kind of right there, you know.
Yeah. To a certain degree, it's a voting issue. I mean, about 10 years ago, I just became, when I vote for the Supreme Court. There's never going to be a perfect candidate. So who do you want appointing people to the Supreme Court? In this case, it's Joe Biden or DT. So and he got
the way Trump was able to put all those justices in, like, his legacy is going to be felt in this country probably to the end of this thing, like, burning out, because I don't see this ending well. But with Alito, again, everybody already kind of knew. One of the pushbacks I have when people say, like, we should pack the court and stuff like that, I don't think I think keep it at the number that it's at, but it should definitely be term limits, this whole lifetime appointee thing.
Right.
And they need some type of ethics. I mean, Clarence Thomas and Alito should be in jail, dude.
Yes.
Yeah.
If not put the fucking death.
Impeached and removed.
Yeah, like
Kavanaugh.
yes, like all of them, and on our side of it too, fucking Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a fucking bitch for not stepping the fuck down when she could have when Obama was in there.
Yep,
she was one of the liberal judges, but that's the problem I have in this country. Like, the Overton window is so far to the right that the liberals that we have in this country are centrist Republicans at best.
Oh yeah. Yes, that's something I learned traveling. At most European countries, including Australia, New Zealand, the conservatives are like our Democrats.
Yeah. And our conservatives are just batshit crazy.
Crazy, yeah. They would be considered fascist by European political standards, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that's why they use the religion to kind of have some type of morality behind their shitty, crazy ideas. And then you throw in the blatant hypocrisy. I mean, a lot of these religious nuts are just closeted, self-hating gay people who try to and I'm not saying that as a pejorative to gay people. I'm saying
it's the hypocrisy.
Right.
The hypocrisy is like one of the big targets for satire, by the way. So
dude, it's so much projection. I hate black people, but I got this half black kid, or this black fetish, or I hate gay people, but I'm gay, or I hate it, or I hate abortion, but my wife had an abortion. Every single time.
Donald Trump has had so many abortions. We don't even know how many.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think
abortions could fund a small country if they
dude. Yeah. I think one of the bigger problems, again, it goes to the propaganda and how the people, I mean, George Carlin had that joke. He was like, these politicians, they didn't come from the sky. They came from American schools, American families. Like, these are Americans. Like, we have a lot of sickness in this country. And as much as I don't like Hillary Clinton, when she said, like, half of those people are a basket of deplorables, I mean, they are. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure you're in some way. It's kind of like the founding fathers, like, yay, they were so smart and they were this and that, but you were a rapist and murdering slave owners. You know what I mean? Even if you didn't personally kill.
All the founding fathers are in hell.
Yeah.
They either had slaves or allowed slavery.
Like, we're complicit in it. So,
and I am a fan of, like, the philosopher and founding father, both Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson. Brilliant minds, humanists. Franklin had slaves when he was a young business owner, and he hated it and spent the rest of his life fighting slavery. But Jefferson, as we know, was just a slave owner on his plantation.
Oh yeah, and then fucking him too, and then I'm going to release him when I die, and then he dies. And they're like, you know what? We'll just keep him because it'll keep the money going. And then denying Sally Hemings' family up until the 90s and all that shit. It's and again, to the point of you can't blame it on it was this different time thing, because they were brilliant men who wrote about stuff and they knew what they were doing. You know what I mean? Yep. So it's
I mean, they were debating slavery while they were doing the Constitution. Like, when Columbus came to America on his second trip, which is where he set up a little post, like an actual post, he immediately enslaved the local indigenous people to build his buildings and things. And on his ship with him was his brother, who was a kind of friar or monk. And his brother told him, you can't enslave those people. They're God's creatures. So the minute slavery came to North America, there was someone standing next to the person saying, this is wrong.
Yeah.
John, you got anything interesting coming up or anything merch you want to plug?
www.johnarmstrongcomedy.
Both of you send me any links you want me to put in the description of the podcast version of this, and I'll make sure it's included. Any website or social media. My book comes out in July, Religious Satire in the Era of New Atheism. It is kind of a Venn diagram of religious satire, September 11th, and the social movement of New Atheism, and how they all sort of overlap and compare and reinforce each other. Okay. And the book version, it's hard copy. It's about $65. Not everybody wants to spend that on a book, but there's a Kindle version you can get for half that, like $25. Okay. So consider looking into that. And of course, you can always email me. We have email comicalheathen@gmail.com. We have a website that archives all our past episodes, including my interview with Louis Black and others. Our theme music is done by combination. My friend Mark Bell is playing the organ, and my friend Jeff Geddett remixed it. Here in this live stream, I don't bother playing it, but in the podcast, that music will lead in, or that music leads into the podcast and comes out of the podcast. Of course, any of our 12 regular listeners, thank you anyone who's watching now or listening to the podcast in the future. Really appreciate your support. And as a final thank you, I always end with this saying, it may be your dogma, but it's my karma, and I'm all about spreading love.